Thank you so much, Pastor West. Thank you, family. It's so good to see everybody. I am extremely excited to continue the teaching in our core values. We are so excited about Discover Community Church. We think we're creating an irresistible church, and these 6 core values will be the foundation that we build upon for building this irresistible church. Tonight, I have the privilege to teach about love. Now, here is the challenge when you teach a concept that everybody already assumes that they understand what it is. That half of your content will automatically be tuned out because we feel like we already know. Do me a favor, because I know you already know. Do me a favor, and could we slow down just long enough that maybe God wants to share some insight that could expand upon what we already know about love. I, like you, look at the news on a consistent basis, and I am struck by what's obvious, that our culture, our world seems to be void of love, right? And while it's easy to be able to look at the news or look out in our neighborhoods and see a culture that's void of love, I think what's even more heartbreaking to me is to understand that the people who should be leading the charge with love are oftentimes the ones setting the worst example or not leading in love at all, right? And that is the church. Where is the love? Where is the example of love coming from the church? We all know that too often the church has been overly critical. Too often the church has been harmful. Too often the church has set a bad example by being too harsh and condemning people wrongly. And so where is the love? I think Stevie Wonder said it best. He said, love's in need of a love today. Don't delay. Send yours in right away, because hate's going around, breaking many hearts. Stop it, please, before it goes too far. We should be examples. The church should be an example of what it means to love. But in way too many instances, unfortunately, we aren't. So let's look at some of the words of Jesus to see if we could glean some new insight on what it means to love, right? So context. So one day, Jesus is having a conversation with some church folk, some of the scribes, some of the Sadducees and Pharisees, and they were always trying to trip Jesus up. They were always trying to catch him in the wrong. And one day they try this and Jesus shut them down. And immediately after Jesus shuts them down, somebody asked Jesus a question. For those of you who have your Bibles, I'm going to be in Matthew chapter 22, starting at verse 34. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees and the Pharisees, one of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? So again, Jesus has just shut down some foolishness with some church. Isn't it amazing how most of the foolishness that Jesus had to deal with came from organized religion, from church folk? Isn't that something? And so here it is, a scribe is trying to catch Jesus. Jesus, what is the greatest command in the law? In other words, they have over 600 laws. And so he's saying, Jesus, which of these is the greatest? Because trying to keep 600 some odd law is rather difficult. Which one is the greatest? And Jesus replied, Love the Lord your God with all your whole, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest command, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And all the law and the prophets hang on these two commands. Jesus, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus gives him two, which he could have came back and said, but I only asked for one. But here's the brilliance of Jesus. Here's the brilliance of Jesus. Jesus connects two laws that any good Jewish person in his audience will automatically know. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind is Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5. And second, love your neighbor as yourself is Leviticus 19. And the brilliance of Jesus is that he matches the two. He mirrors the two. He connects them in such a way that he lets you know that these two are connected. And this is how I know you're doing the first. Because here's the reality. All of us can say, I love the Lord with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength. And can't nobody check up on you on that, can you? And the reason Jesus connects Leviticus is because it's the second command that lets me know you're really doing the first one. The first one can't nobody check up on you on. But the second one is obvious if you don't do it. And he connects the two because if you're truly loving the Lord your God with all that's within you, it's going to overflow in a love for other people. And if you're not loving people, then maybe you aren't loving God. And that's the genius of what Jesus does by connecting two things that they already knew, but they probably weren't practicing. Question, are we practicing the love for our neighbor? The love for our neighbor. I don't think we're doing a great job at loving our neighbor. So here are two reasons why I believe we don't express love. Number one, I believe we don't express love is because we narrowly define who our neighbor is. We too narrowly define who our neighbor is. We would much rather our neighbor to be someone who looks like us. We would much rather our neighbor be someone who behaves like us. We would much rather our neighbor be somebody who sins like us. I'm sorry, I'm talking to church folk. Wait, church folk don't. None of y'all too holy on the Zoom to sin. We would much rather our neighbor be somebody who sins similar to us. We would much rather our neighbor be somebody who sins with the people okay. I think the reason we don't express love is because we too narrowly define who our neighbor is. And when Jesus says neighbor, his definition is so much broader than ours. And so his definition encompasses people who were nothing like him. I say it all the time. People who were nothing like Jesus enjoyed being around Jesus, and Jesus enjoyed being around people who were nothing like him. And we oftentimes miss the mark because we too narrowly define our neighbor. The second reason I think we don't express love is because he says, watch this, love your neighbor as yourself. And maybe the reason we see so much hate is because we don't love ourselves. Maybe we are loving our neighbor like ourselves because we don't love ourselves, and it's easy to express what we don't even feel about ourselves. Question is, do we love ourselves? A whole nother discussion on what it means about self-hate. I had a really good example, but I don't know what your politics, so I'm not going to even go there. Do you love yourself is the question. Because it's hard to love someone beyond your ability to even love yourself. Beyond loving yourself. So this is what I'm going to leave 3 things with you. When you're loving others, it's important to be mindful. Be mindful that there's more in common than there is uncommon. Here's one thing about church folk is that we can be what my grandmama used to call so suchy much, where you think just because you've elevated a step or two, that some way you're better than the people you left behind. And just be mindful that there's more in common than is uncommon. You've got to be mindful that you yourself aren't too far removed from the people you think you're better than. Be mindful, and then in the words of Kendrick Lamar, be humble, right? Be humble. Humble is from the Latin word which means grounded. Don't elevate yourself amongst other people. You got to be humble. Be mindful that there's more in common than there is uncommon. Be humble, and then don't be judgmental. Having or displaying an excessive critical point of view. Don't be judgmental. When you're mindful that there's more in common than it is uncommon, when you're humble, when you don't elevate yourself, when you're grounded, it's impossible to be judgmental when you do those things. So let me tell you what kind of cured me of being judgmental. And don't be disappointed. It wasn't some great religious experience. Most of my friends know I watch very weird TV shows that my family can't stand. And one of the TV shows that used to be my favorite, and I am heartbroken that it's gone, is the TV show Intervention. I absolutely love Intervention. And so Intervention, for those of you who've never seen it, is a show that will follow somebody who is addicted up until the point where their loved ones are planning and going to execute an intervention to get them to go into treatment. I used to be extremely judgmental of people who were addicted to substances. And Intervention cured me. One of the great things about Intervention is that it just didn't show you their struggle or dependency on whatever drug they were on. It showed you the backstory that led them to their addiction. And so while watching Intervention, very rarely was the story that, man, I just loved the party and got hooked on drugs. That was rare to hear that kind of story. The majority of the time, somebody was addicted because of deep pain, because of deep hurt, because of molestation. And what cured me of being judgmental towards drug addicts is the realization that that could have been me, because I have that same kind of pain. I've had that same kind of hurt. I've had that same kind of relationship that went horribly wrong. And that could have been me. And here's the thing. Just because you choose to self-medicate with a cheeseburger instead of a crack pipe doesn't make you any better. You, in your mind, you just found a better way to self-medicate. And we have a tendency to judge people based on what we feel is a worse way of doing things than we've done it. The songwriter says, when nothing else could help, love lifted me. Watch it. When nothing else can help, when everybody else gave up on me, when there wasn't a program, when there was nobody, when they said to me that, hey, we've helped you before, we're not gonna help you again. When nothing else would help, love lifted me. When they said to me, why am I gonna waste time on you again? You said you wasn't gonna do it no more. Then here you are right back in the same place. Love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted me. One day Jesus is with his disciples and he's preparing them for his exit. And this is what he says to them. John chapter 13, verse 34 says, a new command I give you. Love one another. Now, Jesus, why would you have to state the obvious, right? Isn't our natural inclination to love? And Jesus says, I have to make it a command because your reaction isn't to love. Love is going to have to be methodical. Love is going to have to be something you plan to do. Love is a plan that you have to implement and put into action. A new command I give you, love one another. And this is what I love about Jesus. He didn't just give you the command, but he told us how to do it. Because some of us, let's be honest, have a weird definition of love. And this is what he says. He says, love one another. How, Jesus? As I have loved you, so you must love one another. And so most of us would say, but Jesus, when do I give up? To which he would say, when did I give up on you? To which we would say, well, Jesus, isn't enough enough? And he would say, enough was never enough for me as it relates to you. And all I want you to do is go out and treat people like I've treated you. I never gave up on you. I never said your sin was too much for me to come get you. I never said your sin was too much for me to love you. I never said you were too nasty for me to come near you. All I need you to do is go treat people the exact same way I've treated you. And here's what's amazing. Here's what's amazing. By this, everyone will know you're my disciples if, conditional, you have love for one another. Maybe the world has a difficult time of distinguishing Jesus's disciples because they are lacking love. And maybe if we put more love into action, people would be able to see Jesus a lot more clearly. Be mindful, be humble, and don't be judgmental. I'm done, family. God bless you. Let's love.